Even if the sky were to collapse, CEO James's love for Too Deep, a single mother once underestimated by society, and her daughter NHI remained unshakable. At the heart of this story lies a fateful question: would James protect the empire he built with his own hands, or honor the promise binding his heart to the two people who had given his life new meaning? What unfolded was more than a romance, it became a test of character, a vow strong enough to defy destiny itself. The storm inside the suit. To the outside world, James was the perfect image of corporate power: sharp suits, flawless composure, a businessman who bent markets to his will. But beneath the polish lay a heart that had quietly surrendered to a woman the world never expected him to choose. That woman was Too Deep. Once a fruit seller by the roadside, now the center of James's universe. At her side, little NHI, her wide eyes and easy giggles, became the secret reason James smiled when no one was watching. Their story began not in boardrooms or luxury hotels, but in a countryside market. James first saw Deep laughing softly as she wiped spilled juice from Nee's dress. It was not love at first sight, it was gentler, like a melody one hums without realizing until it becomes impossible to forget. Small gestures, growing bonds. James began with simple kindness, offering rides home on long roads, a helping hand when harvests grew heavy. Over time, these gestures turned into late-night conversations beneath quiet stars. Deep spoke of her fears, of raising NHI alone, of the whispers of neighbors, of responsibility that sometimes pressed unbearably on her young shoulders. James was drawn not to her struggle, but to her resilience. She had endured hardship yet laughed with a purity that hardship could not dim. He bought her a new phone to help with work and studies, promising her that education would unlock new doors. He teased her about learning to ride a motorbike, offering to teach her himself. She hesitated. Time was precious, every hour belonged either to work or to Nee's bedtime stories. James's only response was a quiet, understanding smile. The shadow of tradition. But love rarely comes without a price. James's father, a man defined by pride and tradition, saw the whispers and judged them intolerable. A single mother in his son's life was not love but scandal. To him, NHI was a complication, deep a stain upon the family's reputation. His disapproval was merciless. He vowed to return from abroad to end the relationship himself. James's mother, caught between loyalty and compassion, spoke softly to her son. She reminded him that Deep had once saved his father's life and that some promises outweigh pride. Meanwhile, James's company faltered from a failed hydropower investment. Shareholders whispered, rivals circled. Choosing Deep risked not only his father's wrath but also the ruin of his career. Yet each time James considered walking away, he saw Nee's small fingers entwined with Deep's hand, and knew the kind of man he refused to become. Even if the sky falls. One evening, after helping Deep sell her last melons, James parked on a quiet hilltop overlooking fields painted in indigo and gold. The cicadas hummed like distant drums of fate. "Your father will never forgive this," Deep whispered, her voice fragile. James turned to her, the woman who had stood strong through storms greater than his father's threats, and said, "Even if the sky falls, Deep, I will not let go of you or NHI, fighting on two fronts." The weeks that followed tested every fiber of him. Investors backed out. His company tottered on collapse. Betrayal slithered through the boardroom. Yet James fought, exposing the saboteur with cunning precision while shielding Deep and NHI from his father's wrath with unyielding tenderness. There were nights when exhaustion left him trembling, when doubt clawed at his resolve. But he endured, remembering Deep's laughter and Nee's innocent joy, the confrontation. When the final clash came, James stood before his father, once an unshakable figure in his life, and spoke steadily. "I will rebuild my company, even if I must start from nothing. But I will not rebuild my life without them." Anger flashed in his father's eyes, but behind it flickered a reluctant respect. A man who had demanded strength could not ignore it when it stood before him in flesh and blood. A promise sealed. The storm passed. James's company survived, leaner yet stronger. His reputation bore scars, but his resolve was intact. Over time, even his father's pride softened, worn down by Nee's laughter and Deep's quiet grace. On a sunlit afternoon, with church bells ringing and the scent of Deep's harvest filling the air, James knelt before her. He offered not just a ring, but the life he had chosen to fight for. Through tears, Deep whispered yes. NHI danced barefoot in the grass. And for the first time in years, James felt the world finally at peace. Beyond the engagement, the following morning, sunlight painted their small home like a blessing. James watched Deep sleep with NHI curled beside her, his promise renewed in silence. News of their engagement spread through the town. Some neighbors congratulated them warmly. Others whispered in disbelief that a CEO would tie his future to a former roadside vendor. Deep felt the sting of judgment, but James silenced it with a simple act, taking her hand in public, buying fruit from her basket as though it were the most natural thing in the world. That simple act lit Deep's shy smile into something radiant. For the first time, she believed without doubt, they were truly a family. Building together. But happiness did not erase the battles ahead. At his company, delayed contracts and hesitant partners questioned James's leadership. He worked long nights restoring trust, pausing only to glance at a framed photo of Deep and NHI on his desk. Deep, meanwhile, built her own fruit business with quiet determination. She rose before dawn, her hands calloused from harvests, smiling through fatigue whenever NHI tugged her sleeve. Every coin she earned was another stone laid in the foundation of their shared future. One night, James returned home late to find Deep asleep at the table, Nye's lesson books spread like fragile wings. He covered Deep gently with a blanket before sitting beside NHI to help her trace her letters. "Will you always be here?" NHI asked softly. James swallowed hard, kissing her hair. Always, a father softens. Months passed, and strength grew from hardship. James's father, still proud, began to soften. First with a polite nod to Deep. Then a question about Nye's schooling. Finally, a dinner at their modest home, where NHI handed him a peeled orange. His stern face cracked into an unguarded smile, and Deep felt, for the first time, the possibility of peace. Seasons of renewal, seasons shifted. Spring painted orchards in blossoms, and NHI ran barefoot beneath the trees. James knelt beside her, planting a small grapefruit sapling. "One day, this tree will be taller than you," he told her, "but its roots, like a family's love, will keep it standing." James rebuilt his business not with shortcuts, but with integrity. Investors praised his perseverance. He only smiled. "The real strength isn't in the company, it's in the people you're fighting for." At lunch, he ignored colleagues' raised brows as he unwrapped Deep's simple homemade meals. To him, they were more nourishing than any luxury. The victory of love. On a crisp autumn evening, James drove Deep and NHI to a hillside blazing with gold. With a thermos of tea, slices of melon, and a worn guitar, he played an old tune his mother once hummed when storms shook their home. "I used to think power meant never bending," James confessed. "But you and NHI taught me that strength is in the bending, in choosing love even when it's hard." Deep's eyes shimmered. "You gave up everything," she whispered. "No," James said, shaking his head. "I gave up nothing worth keeping. What I have now, what we have, is everything," lessons carried forward. Storms came again, as storms always do, financial challenges, whispers from society, moments of disapproval. Yet each passed like drifting clouds. Their love endured. The story of James, Deep, and NHI offers lessons far beyond romance. True love requires courage. James could have chosen comfort and approval, but he chose commitment instead. Family is not defined by blood. By embracing NHI, James proved that love and responsibility can forge bonds stronger than tradition. Integrity is greater than success. James rebuilt his company with honesty, proving that achievements are empty without meaning. Values matter most when tested. With trust and resilience, they overcame gossip, disapproval, and loss. In essence, the storms of life, whether business failures, family conflict, or societal judgment, are temporary. What endures is love, compassion, and integrity. Even when the sky seems ready to fall, holding on to what truly matters can keep us standing tall.